let's just kind of start at the very basics, at the very beginning, if you will. For just assume that you're talking to somebody that's never heard of this before. Tell me, what is the point, or what is the Smith maneuver? How do you define it? It's kind of named after you, isn't it? You and your dad. I know your dad kind of came up with it, but you carry the name on, right?
Yeah, my father developed a strategy when I was a wee bairn, so I can't take credit for the development of it, but he passed away in 2011, and I am fortunate enough to continue on his legacy and providing the strategy to Canadian homeowners, because it's not easy out there. I think everybody knows it's not easy. It's not getting any easier. And we've got a solution for a lot of Canadians, those Canadians who are fortunate enough to own their home. The whole premise behind the Smith maneuver is the fact that our American cousins can deduct a good portion of their mortgage interest in their principal residence. We Canadians cannot. And that puts us at a significant disadvantage. Now, that being said, we do have the capital gains exemption on our principal residence here in Canada, and our American cousins do not. But if you were to sort of weigh these two, you'd probably want to have tax deductible mortgage. But we're fortunate enough with the Smith maneuver that we can have the best of both worlds. We can actually deduct the interest on our mortgage via this strategy, and we still get to maintain that capital gains exemption. So the challenge we're faced with is the fact that mortgages in Canada are hugely expensive. And I don't have to tell anybody, right? They all know it. All you listeners know that. The math that no Canadian likes to do when they're getting their mortgage is, how much is this actually going to cost me? And the fact of the matter is that if you go out and you get a $400,000 mortgage at 6%, you're at close to around the 40% marginal tax rate. In order to pay off that $400,000 mortgage over the course of 25 years, you have to earn over $1.2 million. That's a lot. And the reason is because you borrowed 400 grand, you got to pay 400 grand back, but you also have to pay interest on that. But before you can make those interest and principal payments, you have to pay tax to the government. So mortgages are hugely expensive. And what the Smith maneuver does is it converts your non-deductible interest on that mortgage to tax deductions, thereby vastly reducing your tax bill. And because you're reducing your tax bill on an annual basis, you have money in your hands that you otherwise wouldn't have, and that's a tax refund. And by applying that against your mortgage each year, you're out of that expensive non-deductible debt faster. And if you're out of it faster, you're paying less in interest. So that non-deductible debt costs you less. Plus, because of the strategy and how it works, you've reduced your tax bill each and every year. And you're only reducing your tax bill because you're getting invested now with money that you may not know you have available to you. And so the way we restructure your mortgage, it allows you to access the equity in your home as fast as you're creating it with your monthly mortgage payment. Most people, they make a mortgage payment and that's it. 25 years later, they're finally clear title to that house, right? It's a long slog. But as fast as they're paying down that bad mortgage debt, they're increasing their equity in the home. And the more equity you have, the more you are losing to inflation because you're not putting it to work. And your listeners will understand this very well. They're real estate investment focused, either active or looking to get into it. And there's an understanding there that if you have equity in any of your assets, it's unproductive. It's dead. There's a reason they call it dead equity. And the higher inflation is, the more value you're losing. So that's why it's so important to put your equity to work as fast as you're creating it, so that you reduce the effect of inflation, you beat the effect of inflation by getting out of that debt faster, by reducing your tax bill, by accruing assets that otherwise you wouldn't have available to you.
That was a very simplified explanation, but I'm still going to say that some of us might need to listen to that 2 or 3 times over to really grasp the concept of it. And I think that there's so many valuable points that you mentioned there. This whole way of thinking and this whole maneuver, we call it, or you call it, is outside of what the general population is used to doing, right?
Yeah.
We're not used to kind of maneuvering things like this. We get a mortgage, we pay it for 25, 30 years, 40 years, whatever it might be. And we expect it to be that long before we pay it off. But what you're saying is, if we do this properly, if we set ourselves up maybe with the right mortgage, and we are using our tax deductions properly, we can pay off our mortgages quicker, correct?
In effect, yes. Now, back to what you just mentioned a moment ago, the fundamental fight that we're facing here is inertia. What I mean by that is, especially the older people in the demographic here, they grew up listening to their uncle, their father and mother, grandparents, and they're all telling you as a young adult, hey, you got to pay off your mortgage by the time you hit retirement. You got to be clear title by the time you hit retirement. What do? We've had this ingrained in us. And so we put our money towards the mortgage. And with limited resources, financial resources, because we're paying out our mortgage and maybe throwing a few extra bucks on it because we got to be clear title, got to be clear title. That's what everyone says. Because we're doing that, putting our money there, we're not putting our money into investments. So we hit retirement age. We have a fantastic party, retirement. Bill shows off his gold watch he got at retirement party. Everyone's there drinking tequila, having a hell of a time. Bill and Mary wake up in the morning. They do the math, realizing they're now unemployed. They don't have any investment assets. All they have is this house, which has for years been earning them negative return, because of all this equity that they've been accruing and not putting to work. What do? Well, they have very little option. They can go to work again, Walmart, Costco. They can ask their kids for money. They can downsize, leave the house that they love, or they sign up for a reverse mortgage. And we're happy that reverse mortgages exist, because who else is going to loan money to a retired senior citizen, unemployed senior citizen? But for those people who are in that position, great, it's there. But we want to be able to avoid that. Because if we sign up for reverse mortgage, we've been working for the bank for 25, 30, 40 years, finally clear of it. The next day, we got to start selling the house back to the bank. It doesn't sound like a lot of fun. So what the Smith maneuver does is it doesn't wait for you to consume your equity via reverse mortgage when you're retired. It puts your equity to work now, when you're as young as you're ever going to be, by getting whatever you pay down on that mortgage, pulling it back out and getting it invested. And letting those investments on a monthly basis, you're doing this. Bang, bang, getting invested. These investment assets, they accrue over time. And now you have a big investment portfolio you can draw investment income from, in addition to your CPP and OAS. You do have funds aside that can provide you retirement income.
So what we're doing with this strategy is we're using the equity that we build up in our house, because, hopefully it's going up in value. Our mortgage is being paid down. We have equity in the house. We're using that equity, instead of it being dead equity like you're talking about and doing nothing for us, we're now taking that money and investing it in something. So now we invest it in something, it's making us an interest rate on our investment. And is that tax deductible? Is there a benefit tax-wise for that?
Yeah, the distinction is, let's say I've got a $500,000 mortgage. I get a brand new $500,000 mortgage. I make my very first mortgage payment. Let's call it $3,000. $2,000 of that $3,000 goes to the bank in interest. It's gone. Goodbye. I don't see it again. That's the price I pay for borrowing the bank's money. And it's not tax deductible. I can't reduce my taxable income by that amount. But $1,000 of that payment does reduce the principal on that mortgage. And if you're in the right mortgage product, when you pay that down by $1,000, you can borrow it back real time. Next month, pay down, borrow back, pay down, borrow back. Now, what a lot of Canadians do, they may have the right type of mortgage product already, not know why they have it. Their mortgage broker or their banker put them in this mortgage. Here you go. They get their statement each month and say, why is this balance, this home equity line of credit balance, it's increasing. I can borrow more and more, about $1,000 a month. Fantastic. That's what it's going to cost me to lease an Audi.
Right.
And so what Canadians do is they pay down their mortgage with this mortgage product if they haven't been taught how to use it, and they borrow it back to buy assets which are going to depreciate in value, which are not tax deductible. So all they're doing is paying down bad debt and borrowing back bad debt to acquire assets which disappear.
Right.
That's if they have the right type of mortgage product but don't know how to use it. If you have the right type of mortgage product but do know how to use it, when you pay it down by $1,000, the limit on that line of credit opens up by $1,000. You pull it out and you invest it. Because the principle on which this functions is the fact that it's been around for decades. If a Canadian borrows with the reasonable expectation of generating income, you can deduct the interest on that borrowing. So to your point, when I borrow that $1,000 each month, the interest I subsequently pay on that $1,000 is tax deductible. It's not the investment itself that's tax deductible. It's the borrowing on the money that I use to buy that. What this allows me to do, if I have the right type of mortgage product, if I understand the difference between debt, which the wealthy do, they're very clear on that. It's for primary reasons they're wealthy. If I understand the value of deductible debt, and I implement the strategy, I pull that $1,000 out each month and I get it invested, versus making that mortgage payment and not pulling it out and getting it invested. That's the nice thing about this, is it doesn't require any additional cash flow from the homeowner on a monthly basis. All I'm doing is using the mortgage payment that I'm making anyways, but I'm accessing the principal I reduce, pulling it out to invest. Because I'm borrowing to invest, at tax time, the CRA, they take their chunk of flesh every 2 weeks off my paycheck, right? I send my tax return and they look at it and they say, oh, we didn't know you had these tax deductions. We took too much money from you, so we got to send you money back. And this is money you wouldn't otherwise have received. So you take that refund, you make an extra payment against your mortgage, pull that out to invest as well. So this is why we're generating the tax deductions, because we're investing this equity each month. We're using that tax relief to make extra payments against the mortgage, so it's gone faster.
So your amount of debt is necessarily not gone, but your mortgage is gone, and your line of credit gets increased as you make these payments, and then you use that line of credit and you invest it in something that's going to make you money. The interest that you pay to borrow that money from the bank, that's tax deductible. And when you, at the end of the year, use all of these tax deductions, you get a credit back, you put that towards your mortgage. So your mortgage is going down, 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 down.
Yep.
Your amount that you are investing as your home equity line of credit is going up, 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 up.
Yep.
But it's also making a return at the same time.
Yes.
Right?
So this goes back to what I was saying, inertia, about how everyone has been ingrained to be mortgage free by the time they hit retirement. If we realize that that is outdated, outmoded, it doesn't work anymore, because we Canadians are going to be in debt for the rest of our lives anyways, we may as well make it tax deductible. Mm-hmm. But if we agree that we want to behave like the wealthy and use debt to our advantage, then we can implement the strategy. And because we're paying down that mortgage and pulling the equity back out to invest, we get the tax deductions. We're able to prepay our mortgage. We're taking advantage of compound growth. Now, an important comment here, it's picking it out of pepper here, but you mentioned earlier that you're paying off your mortgage sooner. And that is not technically the case, because anything that's secured by an asset is a mortgage, regardless of the terms: amortizing, interest only, deductible, non-deductible. So, but we're paying down that bad debt mortgage faster. We're replacing it with an investment loan, which is secured by the house, which over the course, like if I got a 25-year mortgage and I implement the Smith maneuver, maybe it's gone in 10 years, that non-deductible debt. Yeah. But in 10 years, that $500,000 is being whittled down to zero. I've got, $500,000 on that HELOC, that line of credit. And so this is where a lot of people say, but I've been told to be clear title. You want me to maintain my debt? Yes, I do. Why? Because it's tax deductible debt. Does fantastic things for your tax bill. And it's allowed you to build up an investment portfolio, which is worth $1.4 million. Right? You net it out and you got $900,000 net worth improvement over the course of 25 years. Where if you didn't do this strategy, you would have a net worth improvement of zero.